Hello everybody, I'm Nicola Venerandi and my job is to review 2-in-1 detachable screen devices. I've made a video about my currently favorite one, the Lenovo Duet 5, one on the Touchpad Duo, a couple on the old ThinkPad A1, do you remember that? I daily drive the Minisform V3 and more. This is simply my form factor, and thus when Starlab asked me which one of their devices I would be happy to review, I went right away with the 2-in-1 detachable screen device Starlight. I've had it for a few months now, so do I like it? Well, let's start with the hardware quality and design, which on budget 2-in-1s is often wrong. So we have a unique, as far as my collection goes, type of keyboard cover where the kickstand is attached to the keyboard, and as a result you're unable to use the kickstand when in tablet only mode, which saddens me. Most other devices at this price range have a magnetic kickstand that's a component on its own, which works better on a day-to-day basis, and sadly there's still no device that comes close to the Surface Pro, which has an integrated kickstand. I often wonder if it's due to some patents. The material for the whole cover is rubbery plastic. In fact, this is the most rubbery device I've tapped on. It feels very comfortable to hold and rest my palms on, though I've heard of a couple of people that considers this to be a deal breaker. I don't get that myself, but you are warned. The back of the device itself is made with aluminum alloy, and though it does not feel cheap to me, I do prefer a construction that I've found on the other devices that I've reviewed, including one at a much lower price point, the Duet 5. That said, I do appreciate the Starlabs logo, which reflects lights well and is very sleek. My final point on the design is that the keyboard lies flat on the table. This is the behavior of most 2-in-1 devices like the Duet 5 and the ThinkPad, but I still highly prefer when the keyboard attaches to the bottom of the screen, like on the Surface Pro and the Minisform, but both of those have much higher price points, so it's understandable. All in all, I don't feel like I can award any bonus points for the Starlight's design, which feels rather generic. On the other hand, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, and it's the same design shared by many other devices. Before I go on, let me mention that this video is not sponsored. They just sent the device for free to review, and yet it took like time to write, record, and edit. I currently have a goal of reaching 400 subscribers in order to make a living out of this and do it full time, which would mean more videos like this. I'm also paying collaborators for guest scripts on topics which I'm not an expert myself on, and I'd like to pay a good rate to them. So if you like how we are doing things over here, you can sign up on thelibre.news or Patreon or LibrePay or Ko-Fi, or even send a one-time donation over PayPal. All links are in the video description. As I was saying, I can, however, award points for the port selection. Usually these kinds of devices feature one USB-C or two if we're lucky. Indeed, we are lucky here with two, and we also get a micro SD card reader, an audio jack, and micro HDMI. This is a better port selection than some of the premium laptops, such as my old Dell XPS or the new Dell XPS for that matter, though it is still beaten by normal heavier devices. There are a few annoyances here too. The USB-C ports are on the same side and they're towards the top of the device, which makes charging a bit awkward. Compare this to the Duet 5, which also has USB-C ports, but has them on both sides. That's so much better for charging. The micro SD reader is phone-like, which requires a pin to open, and this, I don't know, might be done to protect the circuits inside, though I would have preferred a plug-and-play solution. The micro HDMI is like admirable. I hate micro HDMI myself, as their connectors broke on me like multiple times, but I still love having it as an option, and a full-size HDMI would not fit in here, so it's fine. We get a volume rocker that works out of the box. You would think that this is obvious, but a couple of devices did not support that in Linux without some significant tweaking, so that's good. We also get a dent to make it easier to find the power button, which I appreciate. It's good design, though it also looks off-center which isn't good design. I also appreciate the screen being 2160 by 4040, which in my opinion looks great on a 12 inches and a half device, though everything else about the screen is very standard. The refresh rate is 60 Hz. It has some chunky bezels for the year 2026. It's LCD. There's a slight yellowish tint compared to other devices, but you can adjust that. The brightness falls off rather quickly as the viewing angle increases, and the coating doesn't fight reflections much, but they do generate a weird circular rainbow patterns on the reflected light. Though none of that will be noticeable on a day-to-day work in your studio, it will become slightly more annoying when using the device outside, like under the sun. On top of the screen, there's the touch digitizer, which works great. Touch input is correctly registered, and we get touch screen gestures out of the box if implemented by the desktop, of course. I only have praise here. And like many 2-in-1s, this device also supports pen input, which I love. One great benefit of the Starlight is that throughout my use, it has never given me any palm rejection issues. When the pen gets closer to the screen, the touch screen is disabled as it should, even if it's on, and resting my palm on the screen will not trigger weird events. It's like the best implementation that I've seen on a device so far, so very well. However, the pen itself leaves me unsatisfied. For some reason, the tip slightly retracts when it touches a surface, and that, on top of the standard glass thickness of the screen, leaves a weird feeling when writing notes, like you're not actually touching where you're touching with the pen. I'm assuming that this is related to like pressure levels, which we do have here, but no other implementation felt this tacky to me. This might be different if you draw art instead of taking notes, but for the latter task, I did not feel like I could rely on the device. The pen attaches to the device, to the keyboard, though it does not do so magnetically, which makes it difficult to carry around when in tablet mode. On a broader note, most 2-in-1 devices seem to have issues with handling the pen. The worst offender here is the Duet 5, where the pen holder is not included with the device and you have to purchase it separately, and it simply holds the pen at the back of the device in like an awkward manner. Let's talk about the keyboard, shall we? I love it. They nailed it here. The keys are big, easy to press, and very satisfying. I achieved 90 words per minute out of the box, even though the key sizes are very different compared to my daily device. This entire review was typed on the Starlight, and it has been a pleasure. On top of that, we get retro illumination, yay. There's no Windows key and there's no Copilot key either, which is great. This is the best keyboard I've tried so far on a 2-in-1, and seeing it on the side of the Duet 5 makes it very apparent. The touchpad is big and also feels high quality to the touch, but it's impossible to click at the top of the touchpad. This is the standard on low-end devices, but it makes it a bit more annoying to work with, and it does create a contrast with such a great keyboard, in my opinion. The acceleration curve also felt a bit slow out of the box, but increasing the speed in the settings seemed to fix that, which is great. Next up is audio. I was actually pleasantly surprised at both the quality and the volume, knowing that this is an affordable 2-in-1, which usually compromises on the audio quality. You are not going to use the Starlight as a speaker as a party, but hey, for personal use, it's fine. And with the limited space within the tablet, you wouldn't get anything better. I wanted to make you listen to it, so let me do that. This is maximum volume, by the way.
Ci sono troppe persone cattive nel mondo. Rudy Zerbi è la classica persona che fa pagare alla ragazza il conto. Perché Brumotti è ancora a piede libero? Nella mia testa Fabio Fazio e Luciano Pizzetto sono sposati.
And talking about intrinsic hardware limitation, the webcam on this laptop is as we have sadly expected them to become with their tiny sensors. It's bad. Out of the box, it looks slightly better than the more expensive Minisforum. You saw a picture of the webcam earlier on, but it still has a lot of noise even in decently lit rooms and lacks contrast. The same applies to the rear camera. It's going to be good enough to take a couple of pictures and documents, and that's all it's intended to be, really. A small usability complaint that I have here is that both cameras expose the same name to the user, which is USB 2.0 camera, at least on the desktop which I've tested this in, which is Pop OS. So it's impossible to distinguish them when you, as an example, when the browser asks you which camera would you like to use for a website. Though I don't know how internal components are handled in Linux, so I'm not sure if this is something that can be blamed on the Starlight itself. My unit did not have any pre-installed OS, so it might work on one of the out of the box, if you use one of their tailored images. I have kept the biggest praise and the biggest criticism for last. So let's start with the criticism. Let's talk battery. The specs for the Starlight claim up to 12 hours of usage. However, this does not make any sense. Even at idle usage, the CPU drains enough power to only reach around 8 hours of usage, and that's being optimistic. I'm not sure which settings were used to reach the claimed 12 hours, but they are very far from representing daily usage of a random user. In my own testing, with a couple of tabs open on the browser and nothing else, 80% brightness, I got around 3 hours and a half of battery life, maybe it's slightly more. There's a Reddit poll on the Starlabs subreddit amongst owners of the device, and the most selected option is 5 hours of battery life, and the average answer is lower than that. And honestly, this is all to be expected, as great as the Intel Alder Lake chips can be, powering a 1440p, how do you say? 1440p, yes. With a battery that fits inside of a 12.5 inches chassis is only gonna get you so far. The only way to get good battery life here would be to ditch x86 entirely and go with some Snapdragon-like chip, but as we will see later, this was not an option for the Starlight, and the battery life was a worthy trade-off, so I'm fine with that. However, I am not fine with them promoting a number that's more than double what most users report as their daily battery life, and almost 4 times as much as I'm getting in low-power tasks. Speaking instead of the biggest advantage, that has to be the out-of-the-box free and open-source software support. Not only can you get this shipped with Linux, but it features open-source firmware based on coreboot and ADK too. I've often compared the device with a Duet or the Minisforum, which are some of my favorite laptop/tablets, but neither of those comes with desktop Linux out of the box. And indeed, installing Linux on them is painful, like on both devices. The Duet is a Chromebook, and it's even out of production and requires like multiple steps to boot Linux. And I would love to show you some B-roll of that, but sadly it broke over time, and I don't really have the time to fix that. The Minisforum has a broken volume system on Linux, which is constantly stuck on 100%. Yes, I am not kidding. I daily drive with constantly 100% volume, and the volume rocker requires a third-party script to work, and that's not a great experience. And even if you put in the effort to make Linux run smoothly on them, as I tend to try to do, they're still gonna run on top of proprietary firmware. Even worse, ARM devices like the Duet 5 require work on each device to boot Linux, and most of them won't run it ever. As big as a fan as I can be of the new Surface Pro devices, I've been waiting years for good Linux support, and they just might never get it. As laptop manufacturers slowly transition towards Copilot Plus devices, I'm getting, wow, it's raining really hard outside, sorry. I'm getting increasingly anxious and paranoid that it's going to get harder and harder to boot Linux on devices that ship with Windows and Android out of the box, and I fear that desktop Linux market share will take a hit because of that. Sorry. Sorry, my teleprompter broke. Be right back. Thus, it's hard for me not to review the Starlight without thinking that this kind of devices, from the get-to with open source support in mind, might just be what we need desperately in order to have great and affordable devices like this in the future. I believe that we need to make some compromises today. The Starlight certainly makes those compromises, and let's be honest, you might be able to get an alternative with better specs at the same price. If you are a Linux fan, that might be just enough to make the Starlight a very good recommendation for you. Yeah, I'm sort of scared of every computer going ARM and then Linux not supporting most of them, and then let's make sure that we support devices like this, please. It's very necessary. I also wanted to show you how nice this cup of water is that they've given me for Christmas. Love it. And see you on the next video.